vegetarian and then a vegan since 1970. I vividly remember the horrible sight of these beautiful horses pulling a carriage that was full of people going down Michigan Avenue. I saw it at least dozens of times, really maybe hundreds of times. I remember the sad look. I remember thinking how sad the horses looked. They looked tired. They had no zest for life. Their eyes were empty. It was a horrible picture, really. And then I was totally amazed when I heard recently that Jodie Wiederkehr, about Jodie, and that she was responsible for the outlawing of this practice in Chicago 2 years ago. What amazed me is that I didn't hear anything about it. So we got into contact and she agreed to give us talk about it, which I cannot wait to hear. And then yesterday morning I woke up and I realized, wait a minute, she got this passed in City Council 2 years ago. That was the height of COVID. Perhaps that's why I didn't hear about it. And maybe how many people heard about it? Oh, how many people didn't hear about it? Even you, Barbara. Okay, good. Yeah, so it's going to be very interesting. And I'm very excited to hear from Jodie Wiederkehr.
Thank you, Kay. Is that volume okay for everybody? Good. It was a little loud earlier. And I just want to comment on you not hearing about it. We were unable to do in-person interviews, and yeah, we were unable to be at City Hall for the vote. So
that was remote.
Yeah, and the day they were supposed to, and I'll probably talk about this when I go through, but the day they were supposed to vote, which was a week after we finally got it passed out of committee, it got canceled because of COVID. So we had to wait. So it was like very nerve-wracking to have to wait on something that we had, worked on for so long. So that might be part of the reason you didn't hear about it. So anyway, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming. I greatly appreciate your time and interest, especially during a holiday weekend where many people travel or spend time with family and friends. So I just want to start off with some very good and exciting news. A couple weeks ago, I got a phone call from a Dallas City Council office, and the aide told me that the City Council member was planning on introducing legislation to ban horse carriages in Dallas. So my partner, Gloria Raquel Carbajal, is very dedicated to outlawing this archaic trade in Dallas, where it's much hotter, in the summers than here in Chicago. And she is committed to implementing a lot of the strategies that the Chicago Alliance for Animals used to ban them here. This news that I got from the City Council member's office is all due to Gloria and her dedication. So we're hoping Dallas might be one of the next cities to ban them in hopefully a year or so. And then you may have heard that the horses are off the streets in Philadelphia. My partner's there, Stephanie Curson, who is my partner with Ban Horse Carriages Philadelphia, and then Tiffany Stair, who is one of the founders and directors of Revolution Philadelphia, work together. We work on multiple Zoom calls together, informing them of the things we did here in Chicago to ban them, and they took all of that information to heart and implemented it in Philly. They also brought up ideas of their own, such as having this huge rally on the steps of Philadelphia City Hall. They had numerous speakers, and I spoke. This was last September. And this rally, which drew hundreds of people, was covered by almost every media outlet in Philadelphia, if not everyone. So Philadelphia is on their way too. Now, that was last September, and then the horses were off the street in early this year. Stephanie and Tiffany went down to do outreach, and there were no horses. They went to the stables, there were no horses in the stables. Basically, there was one remaining company in Philadelphia, and they packed up shop and moved out of town. So Stephanie and Tiffany are now working with a philanthropist to bring electric carriages to Philadelphia, which would be the first major city in the US to have electric carriages. And if they do get these electric carriages, the city council member where the horse carriages work has promised to introduce legislation to officially ban them. You can be pretty certain that the horses are off the street, but they still need that ban to make sure they never come back. So the partnership to Ban Horse Carriages Worldwide is an organization I formed after the Animal Rights Conference in August of 2017. My partner, I call her my right-hand woman, Barbara Kranz, and I were sitting at our table, and it was kind of slow, and we were just talking about our campaign, which we formed in 2015, but we were doing monthly outreach, and we just basically said, you know, our monthly outreach is not going to do this. It's not going to ban them. We have to pick up our game. This is our logo, which I think is very amazing. I did not do it. I'm not talented like that. A volunteer created that. So like I said, we were formed in May of 2015 with the goal of making a kinder, more humane Chicago. Our first priority was to expose the cruelty and dangers of horse-drawn carriages and ban them. We have many other goals, but that was our very first goal that we thought was attainable. And that's our logo. That was created by a high school senior. It was kind of my vision, but she created it, and I just found it very powerful. Implementing the city flag. So we started in May of 2015 with educational outreach down by the horse carriage stand, where we would talk to the public, hand out flyers, hold signs. They were very peaceful, but the whole goal was informational and to educate the public why we wanted to ban them. Like I said, in July 2017, we realized these monthly outreach hours of outreach just weren't going to do it. So we decided there at the Animal Rights Conference that when we got back to the city, we would pick a day and we would go down to the horse carriage stand and document the horses and the drivers and try to document any violations of the law. The city of Chicago actually has very liberal laws regarding the horses. For example, the horses couldn't work if it was 90 degrees or hotter at Northerly Island. They could only work a 6-hour shift in a 24-hour period. They could not work during rush hour, so they couldn't work between 6 and 8 a.m. and 4 and 6 p.m. So that in August was our first day of documenting violations. We got down to the horse carriage stand at about 9 a.m. and we basically walked around, sat in her car, and we were on Michigan Avenue until 1 a.m. on Sunday morning. And what we witnessed that day is that every single horse was worked more than double what the law allowed. Now this was August, it wasn't that hot a day, but the most we witnessed was overworking. We witnessed horses going through red lights, the horse carriage operators on their phone going through Michigan Avenue. We realized that is what we have to do. We have to document these violations and then show it to the city. Because what happens, and this is true of every city that still has horse carriage rides, there are laws on the books to protect the horses and the public, but they're not enforced. Nobody moderates this trade, and the laws are never enforced. It's up to the public to expose these violations and then bring it to the attention of the officials. So a month later, we started something which we call Daily Action Alerts, DAAs for short, which are easy actions intended to take 1 minute of your time. Maybe a couple minutes if you want, but you could do it in 1 minute. So they're intended to contact local officials where you can make a phone call, and what we do is we provide the phone number, email address, Facebook page, Twitter, Instagram, if they have a website, online contact form, we provide all of that. So you choose your way, whatever you're comfortable with. If you want to make a 1-minute phone call, you want to send a 1-sentence Facebook message, you want to send an email, you could do so. And then, if it's the horse carriage trade, you would just simply say, please ban horse carriages. And then the next day we would target a different, for example, Chicago City Council member, a different alderman. And we've been doing these since September 2017, and they're very powerful. And then a month later, we founded the Partnership to Ban Horse Carriages Worldwide. And the following month was our second full day of documenting violations. We did this the day after, or 2 days after Thanksgiving. So it was a pretty chilly day in Chicago, and what we witnessed again was every single horse being overworked. Same story, starting early in the morning until 1 or 2 in the morning. So, I have a funny story for you. So we've been trying to get a meeting with Alderman Riley and Alderman Hopkins since 2015, since May of 2015. Their offices would not respond to us. We didn't live in their ward, so they really didn't have to meet with us. We would reach out regularly and they ignored us. So the day I documented the violations in November, 2 days later I was at my paid job that I had to work, and I got a phone call right before I had to start work from Alderman Riley's office. The aide told me that Alderman Riley was not interested in introducing legislation to ban horse carriages, so there was no need to meet with him. So I told the aide, I said, okay, please let him know that this last Saturday we documented every single horse being overworked more than double what the law allowed. We've got multiple other violations that we're sharing with the media in a press release tomorrow. And the other end of the phone was just kind of dead silent. So I said, please let him know that, and then please ask him to call me. Well, I didn't get a phone call, but less than 2 weeks later, this was in the Chicago Sun-Times. So he never responded to me, never called me, but he introduced the bill because we proved to him that the laws were being broken. And this is a very important thing to remember, and I'll probably mention this later, but something people tell me all the time is, my officials don't care. They don't care about animals. They'll never do anything. Well, had we given up on Alderman Riley and Alderman Hopkins, then they wouldn't have done this. They did this because we proved to them the law was being broken day in and day out, every single time the horses were on the streets. So your officials do care. Officials have cats, they have dogs, they have companion animals. So you have to, it's our job to educate them and let them know that laws are not being enforced and animals are, their welfare is not being protected. So it was very exciting to wake up this morning and see this news. So basically, this is what we decided, is we have to continually show the public why horse carriages on urban streets are very dangerous and inhumane. And that every city breaks the law. There is not one city that has, this is a difficult trade to regulate. In order to regulate it, you would literally need members of city staff down at the horse carriage stand from whenever they start until 1 or 2 in the morning, for example, in Chicago. So no city pays staff to do that. I was going to put this video on the PowerPoint, but it's very difficult to watch. If any of you saw the video of Ryder in New York City, you know what I'm talking about. But this horse collapsed about 9 months ago, and this driver, who is the owner of the horse, was whipping Ryder over and over again to get him up. And the horse was in such pain that he just laid on the ground. Ryder is now dead. Ryder is now dead because New York City won't ban this trade. And the sad thing is New York City has been trying to ban this trade since the 1980s. And Ryder is just one of many New York City horses who have collapsed and died. Billy died in his stall recently, in the last year or so. Right before we banned them in 2020, 2019. Aisha died, she collapsed and was pulled into a trailer. No veterinarian was called, and she died. And so the interesting thing is they have deaths and collapse and accidents all the time, yet they can't seem to get it done. Let me see how I can play this. There we go. So this is a compilation of accidents that CAA put together. That's pretty powerful to prove that it's not just about the inhumane treatment. It's about the real dangers when you mix motor vehicles with slow-moving horse carriages. Sorry, I'm trying to get that.
And this really tells you the story of just how serious this accident was. Now, we are told that a female driver of this carriage was heading from Newport into Cincinnati when the carriage was hit by a car.
Oh my God, this horse is collapsed in the middle of a busy street.
A horse on the ground near the intersection of Meeting and Hazel.
Carrying a full load of passengers.
She was driving with her daughter when she saw him.
The horse was down, it was not moving. People were trying to feed it water.
The horse struggling to get up.
I believe that was Milwaukee right there. These are young newlyweds.
Well, I was up crossing the street and I saw the horse carriage, or I saw the horse just like galloping, full speed. It obviously looked like it was very scared, and I don't know what happened, and I thought it was going to stop, but it just kept going, and it was running in oncoming traffic, and then it came down here, and then I heard a big crash, and then everybody started coming over here, and it was very scary, obviously, and we were all wondering if the horse was okay, and if people were okay.
So as you can see, some people I think it's a nice romantic, ride can turn into a deadly accident in a matter of minutes. Because you think about it, these horses are 1,000, 2,000 pound prey animals. So they're huge, and so the littlest thing can scare them. I remember one accident in New York City, somebody opened an umbrella near the hack line. It sent the horse taking off. And if you have children or a baby in the carriage, there are no child seats, there are no seat belts, there are no airbags, and we know of accidents where mothers have had to literally jump out of the carriage holding an infant to save themselves. So it's a very dangerous trade, and You're mixing, it's a very dangerous mix. Oh. Okay, so these are just, I had mentioned the accidents and the fatalities in New York City, and those are recent. And there are so many since this, but this just is an example of all the multiple accidents that happen. I won't spend too much time on these, but I just want to give you an idea of, they can happen anywhere. And one thing, is some officials will say, well, we haven't had an accident in our town or city. Well, just wait. It doesn't matter where it happens, it's going to happen. If you have horses on your street, it's going to happen. That's the one you just saw with the horse trying to get up, which I think was very hard to watch. This horse is like on top of a car. It's also dangerous to your car. This one really takes me because it's not just the horses who are injured or killed. And if you're trying to really get a ban, it's important to let your officials know that humans can be harmed and killed by this trade too. So, an American couple are on vacation and they get killed when their pony loses his footing. So, it's not just, dangerous to the animals. And here's another one where the operator was killed in San Antonio. I don't know why that's there. I'm not sure why that didn't work, but as you can see, these happen all over the place. And this is another one that I always tend to tell people about. This was in St. Louis, and a horse gets startled and runs into the freezing Missouri River. I think it was the day before Christmas, with the carriage still attached. So he drowned in the frozen water in St. Louis. This is an example of many of Chicago's horse carriage operators, how they would react when we would document them breaking the law. Now keep in mind, look at the passengers. He's got a young passenger, maybe a teenager or preteen young lady in his carriage, and this is how he acts. So these are the kind of people who represent the city. Okay, here's a spiky hair, giving us more finger gestures. They don't like us. It's number 20. I don't know if you could see, but there were some young ladies in there. So I think it's going at 3 o'clock. That was an example of documenting violations and their behavior, because their behavior helped our campaign. Because no city wants people working in their city who, are driving a horse carriage and using profane language or profane, acts in front of minors or, in the city at all. Okay, here's spiky hair. Okay, I could not pull up this video, but I'll describe it for you. A horse carriage operator was smoking right next to the horse. The horse can't get away. He's got blinders on. She's just smoking. She throws the cigarette down right by his feet. And it's smoking. It's still smoking. And so one of my volunteers, Lindsay Perlman, I'm not sure if any of you knew her. She was a wonderful woman, and she passed away a year ago. Lindsay got this video of this driver, and she is videotaping the burning cigarette by the horse's feet. And she said, this poor horse has to breathe in this, poisonous exhaust. And so the driver finally goes and picks up the cigarette butt and puts it out and throws it in the trash. But it just shows you how little most of these horse carriage operators care about the animals who, they're making their living off of. This is another one of the many violations we would document.
So we've been here about 20 minutes. We got here and there's no water. And 20 minutes after we get here, now they're filling the bucket of water for the horses. So how long do they go without water? So why didn't they have water before? Sir? Can you answer me? So if we don't come down, they don't get water all day, is that it?
Yeah, so we would go down to the horse carriage stand for our, either to document or for our educational outreach. And in the winter months, in the summer months, they have a fountain. So the fountain was usually full of water. But in the winter months, they had to fill the bucket of water. And we went down there multiple times and there was never water. So part of the reason for that is because the operators did not want the horses urinating or defecating. Because if they urinated, one of the laws was that they would have to stop the horse and pour down like a solution to clean the street. And they never did. So they didn't want to give them water. They didn't want to ever give them food. And there wasn't even a law on the books regarding how often they must be fed while working. So imagine these 1,000, 2,000 pound horses going all day with very little water and no food. Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation.
Yeah.
Really informative. Before there was the ban, were there any laws about colder weather? I think you mentioned warmer weather.
Yes, the cold restriction was, I believe, 15 degrees at Northerly Island. So they could work at 16 degrees. Yeah. And actually, it sounds odd, but Chicago really had liberal laws. So in a way, we were lucky that we had laws that we could, fine them violating. Some cities have no laws. So I tell those activists in those cities, use Chicago as an example, because Chicago banned them. So use them and tell your officials, if they're working the horses at 95 in San Antonio, it's too hot, or, in Niagara, if it's 0 degrees.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
About the temperature, because you're saying Northerly Island, and I know they probably have the equipment for the temperature, but 2 blocks away on Michigan Avenue, the temperature's 20 degrees hotter on the pavement than all the exhaust from the cars.
You're exactly right, and we would bring that up all the time. Because originally, the temperature was taken at O'Hare, which makes no sense. And you're right, Northerly Island is basically in the lake. So when it was 90 degrees, the law was 90 degrees or hotter at Northerly. So there were days, I remember one 4th of July, my weather app was set to Northerly Island. So it was showing 92, 93 degrees at Northerly. I had a friend in town, but I said, I have to go to the horse carriage stand because I know the horses will be out and they'll be working them. So we got down there, and it's important that if anybody ever takes, a campaign like this or any campaign, you can use our strategies for anything. I would take a screenshot of the temperature, and then I would take a video, and then I would take another screenshot. So the date and timestamp on my showing the temperature and showing the video shows that they're overworking or that they're working them when it's too hot. And then you'll have the operators who lie to us often and say, oh, well, we can be here, because, they'll make up any excuse. One thing they would tell us when they couldn't work, what the law stated in Chicago was clearly they could not work the horses between 4 and 6 p.m. because that's rush hour. So what they would do is leave the stable, which was around Clybourne and Fullerton, and leave about 5:30 and start making their way to the horse carriage stand on Michigan. And I would document, I would be standing there documenting them at 4:35, 4:45. And they would say to me, as I'm videotaping, oh, we can be on the street now, we just can't be down at the horse carriage stand at 6. But the law was very clear. They could not be on the street between 4 and 6. and we prove that to the legislators. So don't ever take an animal exploiter's word for it. Read the law, talk to your legislators. They are not lawyers, okay? So the Chicago's horse carriage operators racked up hundreds of citations and thousands of dollars in fine, and that's due to CAA's documentation. The city threatened to take all three companies to court, and then they basically settled with them, and they only had to pay a fraction of what they owed. We don't really know the number they paid. After they were taken to court, they were required, part of their new requirement was that they had to keep logbooks of each horse, when the horse went out to work, what time, the temperature of the day, how often they got water. They were supposed to do this for 3 months. So I filed a Freedom of Information Act request. Not one company filed any logbooks the entire time. So this was after all these fines and citations, and they're still not following the law and submitting the required logbooks. There were a couple accidents in Chicago before our campaign really went into gear. They weren't major, no media caught it, but for example, this horse got loose, which again is very dangerous, rolled over the driver. This driver failed to restrain the horse, and again the horse got loose and running along Division and Wells, which is right downtown, the downtown kind of bar district. This was a horse that collapsed near the Hershey store, right near the horse carriage stand. Again, someone shot a photo of it, but they got the horse up before any media was there to either take footage or do a story on it. And this was in 2014 before CAA even formed. This is really the only one that I know of that ever got media where a van hit the carriage. But for example, 4 children had to be rushed to the hospital along with the driver. Imagine if just one of those children had been killed. We would have banned this back in 2014. Unfortunately, you don't want an accident in your city. You don't want a fatality. But that's going to help ban them because the officials will realize, a child just died from this archaic trade. So in a matter of 3 years, they were fined over $6,000. This was from the homepage of Antique Coach and Carriage, which was the biggest of the 3 horse carriage operators in the city. And if you'll see the bottom one, it talks about how the ranch offers a horse breeding program and stud services. I bring that up because when we were getting close to banning them, a lot of people said that we basically were sentencing these horses to kill pens and slaughter. And it's not our fault that these horses were bred into the world and exploited. So, we did our best to get these horses to sanctuary. We reached out to multiple sanctuaries who reached out to the owners and offered homes for every single horse at no charge. The companies were unwilling to release their horses. So CAA did everything we possibly could to get the horses to sanctuary. But again, horses are considered property. They're owned by the companies. So they weren't willing to let any go to sanctuary. But what we did is we banned the trade and we stopped, hopefully, more horses from being bred and brought into the world only to be exploited and suffered. So that was their front of their page on their home site, where they say they live on a farm, and then this is where they went after working a 12, 13, 14-hour day. And these stalls are basically cages for a horse. A cage is just bigger than your body, so a stall is like a cage for a horse. And so when they're not in their stall, in a cage, they're out with blinders on and being exploited and breathing exhaust for 12, 13, 14 hours a day. So the strategy CAA used to successfully ban horse carriages in the 3rd largest city in the United States without any paid staff, without any accidents or fatalities, and without any celebrity support. This is what we used, and this is what I urge other activists in other cities to implement. So as I've talked about, probably all of these, but documenting the violations, our daily action alerts where we reach out to city officials, educational demonstrations, which we would do at least once a month, where we go down near the horse carriage stand, always peaceful. We held signs, we had flyers that we'd hand out to the public that basically urged any local Chicagoans to reach out to their city council member, their alderman, and any tourists, because it's a very touristy area where the horses work, urged them to reach out to the mayor, and we provided all the contact information for the mayor on our flyers. We also had testimonials, so sometimes people would come up to us and just say, "Oh, I hate that, they need to be banned." And if someone really showed a lot of passion for it, I'd ask if they would be willing to give us a testimonial on camera, on video, 30 seconds to a minute, saying their first name, where they are from, and why they think they should be banned. I have an example of that maybe in my next slide. We also would speak at city council meetings. They started allowing public comment shortly after our campaign formed. They gave the public 30 minutes. And each person can speak for 3 minutes. So basically 10 people, maybe 11 could speak. The first time we went, we got there about 9:30 and the meeting started at 10. We were way too late. I think you were there with me, right, Mom? Yeah, so the next month we realized we had to get there early, and we got there, 7 or 7:30. And I had 2 or 3 very dedicated volunteers would go every single month. We would have to basically sit on the floor from 7 a.m. till 9:30 until they would let us into the gallery. But we did it every month, and we educated those officials. We also would have Twitter storms, call storms, contact storms, where we take 2 hours on a Saturday and urge everybody to call and reach out to the officials every way possible. We would reach out to the media with press releases, with letters to the editor. Media is key in your campaign. If you want to ban something, if you want to educate the public, you've got to reach out to the media and try to form relationships with them. We also would get business endorsements. So at the time when we got our ban, we had more than 200 business endorsements from veterinarians, horse rescues, horse advocacy organizations, animal rights organizations, local restaurants. Any business that's willing to sign would count as a business endorsement. So PETA, the major organization, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, the Humane Society of the United States, Mercy for Animals, all signed CAA's business endorsement. So when I would testify before the city council, I would say, on behalf of the millions of people represented by our business endorsements that want this banned, it's not just, the 3-4 dedicated CAA activists, but we have millions of people who want to see horse carriages off Chicago streets. We also had a walk for carriage horses around Michigan Avenue. That was pretty successful, and we got media on. This is what I was talking about, the importance of media. We got a lot of media on our campaign, and even if you don't get the media, if you send a press release, you're educating whoever's seeing that, whoever works in that media outlet who sees your press release, you're educating them on the issue. So the daily action alerts, like I said, are meant to take a minute or less to do. We post them on Facebook because that's where you can reach the most people. And you tag people and make sure everybody knows that anyone can participate. A lot of people will say, well, I don't live in Chicago, I can't do that. Well, yeah, you can, because you can either tell the official you don't live in Chicago and that you don't want to visit until they're banned, or you don't have to tell them at all. There's not enough time in the day for officials and their aides to research where every message comes from. So if you're sending a Facebook message or a tweet, they don't know where you live. They don't know if you're a Chicagoan. But if you are in the city where they're working on it, it's very important you tell them that you live in Dallas or San Antonio and you're their constituent. You live in their district. So it's very important to let people know that anybody can take action on these. This is an example of the like the signatures we get in person at our monthly outreach. And as you can see, someone from Italy, someone from St. Louis, a lot of Chicago, a lot of suburbs, but we would get people from all over the place to sign. And we also delivered this to Mayor Lightfoot's office. Now this is an example of the testimonial I mentioned, and this woman really was powerful.
I believe this kind of industry should be banned from Chicago because it's a horrible industry and it's not to the way at all. And I'm from the UK and I've been to so much.
Thank you so much. So, we would get testimonials from people like her who, that's how I used to be when I was younger. When I'd see horses, I'd be sad and crying. And so those are powerful to show to officials. This is an example of our endorsement pledge. This was from Mercy for Animals. And it's a simple, one sheet of paper saying, that they support our humane campaign to ban horse carriages. And I would send these to colleagues through Facebook Messenger. You can email them, very easy. And all you're asking for is a signature. There's no commitment on the part of whoever's signing, other than saying they support your campaign. So horse carriages, there are many bans around the world, but unfortunately there are many, many cities that still have them. So this is just an example of some of the cities that have banned them. And there are many others that are actively working on that I am trying to help. So, if you're here today, I hope you'll join CAA on Facebook and participate in our easy daily action alerts. We're also on Twitter at Shy Animal Rights. Our partnership Twitter is at Ban Horse Carriage with 1 R, because I only had so many characters. Our partnership website is updated regularly with accidents and fatalities, new legislation and new successes, new petitions. Okay, so I went over all the horse carriage campaigns, and I'll go quickly. See, I'm going already on close to an hour. But our current campaigns I'd like to tell you a little bit about. Right now, we are trying to rescue a tortoise named Spur, who has been inside a pet store in Lincolnwood, which is just on the northwest side of the city, for more than 30 years. She was stolen from her home and family, trafficked to Lincolnwood, and has been stuck in this tiny, approximately 4x6 display case for more than 30 years. We started this campaign in September 2021. We started protesting the animal store the next month. And our very first protest, we did not see any water in Spur's enclosure. So it was a Sunday, so we called the police. We didn't want to bother them, but every animal deserves to have water, access to water. The owner, or the policeman, spoke with the owner, who said that she doesn't need it. That, she's a sulcata African tortoise and she doesn't drink a lot of water. Well, that may be true, but she should at least have the choice. And to this date, we still have never once seen water in her enclosure. And I've spoken with 2 people who run tortoise and turtle sanctuaries who have told me that they should have access to water 24/7, just like every other living being. We started submitting public comment before Lincolnwood officials in December of 2021. This is Spur. She doesn't look very big there, but she's pretty big. And this is all she has. She has a tiled enclosure. It's approximately 4x6. It's like bathtub tile. So when we first started documenting, she would see us and try to climb up this tile. And then she'd fall, and she'd hit her chin, she'd hit her head, and it was just heartbreaking to watch. We've gotten some good media. The Chicago Tribune covered this last November. So, Lincolnwood's own law prohibits naturally wild animals in the village, prohibits them from being kept or sold, as you see the top one, under birds and snakes. They say that Spur is the only naturally wild animal in the animal store, yet they sell dozens and dozens of wild animals. Their law does not specify what naturally wild means. In my head, naturally wild means an animal that has not been domesticated. But they say that naturally wild means an animal that was actually taken from the wild. And they say that Spur is the only animal that is a naturally wild animal. Yet, I've done a Freedom of Information Act request to Illinois Department of Agriculture, Illinois Department of Natural Resources, Chicago, or Cook County Animal Control, and even the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And not one of them have any records on where the animals are coming from. So the officials continue to lie to the public in emails, through social media, and at their meetings that Spur is the only naturally wild animal that was taken from the wild. Yet, the animal store's website has stated that Virginia opossums, prairie dogs, and some reptiles are taken from the wild. And not one agency has records on where any of these animals are coming from. So, in a nutshell, they continue to break their own laws day in and day out. Kind of heartbreaking, isn't it? And she used to do this every time we went there. She would see me, and if I walked from one end of her enclosure, she'd follow me, and she would try to climb up, and she'd fall. Now she doesn't do it. Honestly, I feel like I don't know, but it almost seems like she is being drugged because she no longer tries to climb up the side. It's like she's given up. So on March 15th of last year, the Lincolnwood Board finally put our humane campaign on their agenda, which really didn't take that long. We started testifying before them in December, and so in March they put it on their agenda. They gave the board 3 options: to vote to enforce their law, to waive their law, or to change their law. So there are 6 trustees and a mayor. 4 of the trustees voted to waive their own law. That is keeping Spur in this intense confinement. If they had voted to enforce their law, it would require the owner of the animal store to move Spur out of that cage. He said he would put Spur in his basement, and that's his way of saying, well, she'd be better in this cage than in my basement. I don't believe he would put her in his basement. The reason he has her in the store is as a prop, to bring people into his store. And if they enforce the law, he might be willing to allow her to go to sanctuary. Just like the horses, Spur is considered property. So we can't take her, they can't force him to send her to sanctuary. However, again, if they enforce their law, it would put a lot of pressure on him to allow her to go to sanctuary. Did you have a question?
Well, you're saying they don't allow the sale of rabbits in Illinois?
Well, that's another issue, is the Cook County law that prohibits the sale of rabbits. The Cook County Companion Animal Protection Ordinance, it's a long name. They have been waiving that law. Lincolnwood has been waiving that law for more than 7 years.
I thought that people regularly had rabbits as pets.
Oh, they do. But it's illegal to sell them at pet stores in Cook County. And Lincolnwood opts out of this law, which means the animal store continues to sell rabbits, and that rabbits are dumped daily, and volunteers and rescuers at Red Door Animal Shelter, which is right down the street, maybe a couple miles from the animal store, has to go around rescuing rabbits all the time. It's actually something.
I didn't know I don't know, I kind of came late, so I don't know if you talked about rabbits, but I didn't know there was a problem with.
There's a big problem. Red Door, I think last year had over, I don't know, not sure.
I thought that rabbits make good pets.
They do, but there's only so many homes.
All right.
When you have 500, dumps and when you're abandoned rabbits, there aren't enough homes for them.
I also read an article like a couple years ago where rabbits fell into that category of people who like adopt them at Easter
Yes.
and then put them in shelters like a month later because
Yeah.
they don't know how to.
Definitely.
They don't care for them. They never have,
That's a real thing, is that they're bought on a whim. Children want them for Easter, and then they realize they're a difficult pet. They take a lot of care.
Do people touch this tortoise? Are they allowed to touch the visitors?
You mean like,
Touch it? Are they
I'm not sure. I mean,
Because,
the thing is if someone wanted to, they could.
well, I don't know what the law is, but my brother has turtles, and we've had box turtles in the house. My dog loved. And it goes to the vet every year. His turtles go to the vet every year, get tested,
Uh-huh.
and get inoculations.
Yeah.
Because my brother walks his turtles. He walks them with a lead.
People can go into a store if they wanted to touch her, by the way, she's a female. They could, because there's not enough staff to make sure that they're not.
I
So,
wonder if he is a new vet privilege.
well, we know he breaks the law day in and day out. We know that. I'm going to keep going, and then we're going to have time for Q&A. No problem. And by the way, sulcata tortoises can be live to approximately 100 years, give or take. So she's been in this, small space for over 30 years. We think she's approximately 40. We don't know her exact age, but she could be in there for another 50 or 60 years. She never gets to feel sunshine on her shell. She never gets to feel, the earth or grass under her paws. She doesn't get to live outside. There's nothing natural about her life. So we have 2 sanctuaries willing to take spur. The Desert Oasis Turtle and Tortoise Sanctuary, DOTS for short, is in Arizona. And in Arizona would be one of the most closely related habitats to her African, where she came from in Africa, where her average temperature would be between 80 and 90 degrees. So we would love to get her to DOTS. And we could get her there for free with no charge to Cook County taxpayers. We also have Big and Small Tortoise Rescue and Sanctuary. That's in Iowa, which would still be a much better place for her than where she is now. But that's still the Midwest, so it's a little bit cold. But they've got heat boxes, and they know how to take care of them there. Okay, so our other campaign that we're working on diligently right now is to free Rocky, a coyote who was found in Tennessee as a pup. His eyes weren't open yet. The people who found him took him to a local animal shelter and thought he was a dog. So he was handled by humans, he was socialized to humans. He thinks he's a dog. He's like a dog. But for some reason, he was transported to Illinois and has been stuck in a tiny cage in Northbrook at River Trail Nature Center. He paces constantly. He has absolutely no companionship. He's a pack animal who has been alone for almost 5 years now. We started this campaign last January. We started testifying before the Cook County Commissioners, who are also the same commissioners as the Forest Preserve District of Cook County. Does that seem odd to anyone? We've gotten a lot of media attention on this campaign, including Ricky Gervais. He has made a statement. He totally supports our campaign to get Rocky to sanctuary. And international animal rights group In Defense of Animals has been helping us on this campaign. This is just a few examples of the media we've gotten, and it's not just Chicagoland. I mean, if you look here, there's a San Francisco Gate, Goshen, which I can't think of where that is right off the top of my head, but this has made like international news. This is where we would love Rocky to go. the Wild Animal Sanctuary in Colorado has offered Rocky a permanent forever home at absolutely no charge to Cook County or our taxpayers. They would come to Northbrook, they would carefully transport Rocky back to Colorado. The Wild Animal Sanctuary does amazing things. They just recently saved rhinos, elephants, big cats from debilitated zoo in Puerto Rico. And these animals survived going from Puerto Rico to the United States. Yet Cook County commissioners say, well, Rocky might not survive the trek to Colorado. And then they say that Rocky might be harmed when he gets to Colorado. But the people who run the Wild Animal Sanctuary know how to slowly and carefully introduce coyotes to one another. And Rocky needs a companion. So we are going to keep pushing until Rocky gets to the Wild Animal Sanctuary and has a home where he can run and he can be around others. And he has actually fresh water in the winter, unlike the frozen water we've documented many times. So the Forest Preserve District of Cook County voted to deny Rocky Sanctuary. They only voted to enlarge his cage a little. They have not offered him a companion. Again, he's a pack animal, and because he was handled by humans, he likes humans. They actually click train him. We have videos of his handlers going in and click training him like he's a dog. Yet they continue to say he's a wild animal. He definitely is a wild animal by nature, but he has been socialized like a dog. So imagine your companion dog at home, living in a cage in the middle of Northbrook at Christmas time when it was 0 degrees and 40 below wind chill. And all he has is a plastic dog house with no straw. Due to FOIAs that we've requested, we have found that they are spending a minimum $148,000 of our tax dollars, Cook County tax dollars, to enlarge his cage. And they're not enlarging it much. I just saw it last week. And a lawsuit has been filed, not by CAA, but by the woman who alerted us to Rocky. So we know through the money being spent on to enlarge the cage and legal fees, they've spent at least almost $170K of tax dollars to keep imprisoning this wild animal who's like a dog. You're used to being frightened by something outside. That's his life. But CAA is in it for the long haul. We're going to keep fighting for Spur and Rocky and every animal who deserves freedom. And we realize positive change doesn't happen quickly. I'm getting all sad. Sorry. It's very important for everyone to realize these campaigns do not happen quickly. A lot of people give up. A lot of people stop helping. CAA stop participating by testifying or protesting. But if you stick with it, you'll win. And that's what I really want to drive home. I've worked and counseled so many activists in other cities. When Chicago passed our ban, and we got a lot of media, I posted on social media, a lot of people would comment and say, I hope Indianapolis is the next city. I hope Minneapolis is the next city. Or my city, I hope my city is the next city. And I would respond and I'd say, I would love to work with you. I'd love to help you. I've guided activists in Boston, Atlanta, Charlotte, Charleston, Indianapolis, Niagara, Malta, Memphis. I mean, I could keep going. And Savannah, Georgia. And unfortunately, every single one of these people I have counseled or, had Zoom calls with and gave them our campaign strategies and urged them to at least start implementing some of the strategies we use, like the educational outreach, the DAAs, reaching out to city council members. They've all given up. And I'm not trying to shame or slam anyone, but the fact is if you can't get a ban unless you stick with it, giving up will never get you there. And it gets hard after our 4.5-hour hearing, when we got our first hearing in September of 2018. The bill was introduced in December. We got it heard in the committee in September 2018. 4.5-hour hearing, because they allowed anybody and everybody who wanted to testify regarding it in support or against to speak, and then the committee members could ask you questions. So it really was long. At the end of this hearing, we had the votes to pass it. We had the votes, and the aldermen who were on our side, who wanted to get it to a vote, were ready for a vote, and the chair of the committee kept blocking the vote. She actually stood up and said, "Why are we talking about horses when there were children on our street being shot?" So what she did was basically say that, because we care about horses, we don't care about Chicago's youth getting shot in the street, which is not true at all, as you all know. We can actually care about animals and humans at the same time. But what she did was she blocked the vote. And that was September 2018. We had to wait until March 2020 to get it back on the agenda in the committee. So the day that happened, I went home and cried myself to sleep. I was devastated. But guess what? The next day I started over. We started doing DAAs. We didn't give up. And that's why we won. And anybody can do this. I'm not special. Anybody can do what CAA did. But we need your help. We can't do it alone. 2-3 activists, it's going to take a lot longer if we had, CAA's 3,000 plus helping. So just some final thoughts. Whatever your campaign is, whether it's horse carriages, or you want to ban rodeos, or you want to help the homeless, or you want to ban horse racing, research your city or town's laws. Research the laws in your state regarding the issue. It's important to know your laws regarding whatever you're working on, and if you can anyway document violations of those laws, that's key. It's very important that we meet and develop relationships with our local city council members, with our mayor, with our state officials, with our federal officials. And you got to urge your volunteers to do the same. And then if you do document violations, you got to pass those along to the city officials and educate them on the fact that the laws are not being enforced and the exploiters are not self-regulating. Again, send press releases, letters to the editor, develop relationships with members of the press. Another good idea is set Google alerts to words regarding your campaign, and then you'll find out if there's any media about it. I think I've covered everything. Oh, one last question. Anybody here on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, social media? Okay, so one thing I find is a lot of people will complain, if I share, say, one of those videos of animal cruelty on social media, I might get 100 complaints. Oh, that's awful. Rocky needs to go to sanctuary. Spur needs to get to sanctuary. We gotta ban horse carriages. But people complain a lot on social media, but that's not doing anything. That is not getting to the people who can make positive change. So I'm not saying you can't complain or vent, but you should take those words, copy and paste them, and send an email to your legislator or send a Facebook to your message. It takes the same amount of time to send your complaint to an official as it does to complain on social media. So that's really powerful, because a lot of people they want change and they can feel helpless, like I can't do much. But I gotta tell you, if you start taking effective action and sending your complaints to the officials who can change that, as opposed to just complaining on social media, you will feel better. You'll feel like you're making a difference. You'll be part of the change. So that is my presentation. And I know a couple of you guys had questions. You guys? I thought I saw you wait.
I have so many questions.
Oh, okay. Well,
Okay.
go.
The little Rocky. What is advantageous to having him in that cage? Like, who has him that they won't release him to a sanctuary?
Well, we did meet with the Cook County Commissioner where Rocky is located in Northbrook, and his name is Scott Britton. He actually supports our campaign. He supports Rocky's release to sanctuary. Unfortunately, Cook County leadership, the president, Tony Preckwinkle, does not. And he basically, it's a very good question. What he told us, no, exactly. Well, what he told us, a couple of things. He said, if Tony doesn't support it, no one else will, because they all fall in line. It's very similar to Chicago's mayor. You know, when our bill continued to get delayed because Lightfoot would not allow it to go forward. So I don't even understand what the point of having a city council or commissioners if everybody has to fall in line with the top dog. Pardon the pun. But what he did tell us is that what they believe, and this is absolutely ridiculous, is that if they allow Rocky to go to sanctuary, then our group or animal rights activists are going to go out after the zoos.
Oh, for God's sakes.
If they only knew how much work we had to do before we even tackle zoos.
Yeah.
So that's one thing he said. Another thing he told us is that there have been a couple people during the testifying who have used words either like slavery, incarceration, enslavement, and that certain members of Cook County are very offended by that. The fact is he is incarcerated.
Absolutely.
And, you know, so we shouldn't have to watch our language to free an animal. But that's one thing we've been told is they're angry that someone used a word that offended them.
I don't know if you want to, do you think somebody's making money off of him?
No, Rocky is a prop, like Spur's a prop.
Okay.
Rocky is in a cage so people can come look at him.
Okay.
That is part of the reason too. They don't want to let him go because it's like a roadside zoo. Cook County, some of the forest preserve is like a roadside zoo. There's animals in tiny cages for people to look at.
There you go.
All they have to do is look out the window and they can see it.
Yeah.
It's Chicago, it's
Yeah.
suburbs. Look out the window, you'll see one.
Right.
Out of curiosity, I know that, so Spurs in Lincolnwood, Rocky is in the Cook County Preserves?
Northbrook, yep. And
Yeah, well, I don't know about Northbrook, but I'm near Lincolnwood. Where more specifically, where is?
It's right out Sweet.
it's a pet store called the Animal Store. And she's in like a display case, all glassed in. And so she's supposed to be in Africa with a temperature around 80, 90 degrees. And she's up against glass in Chicago's cold winters. And whenever on cold days, she's the furthest that she could be from the glass, which is not that far. Yes, so Lincolnwood.
It's on Tui.
On Tui.
Yeah, just west of Lincoln.
Like just west
Just
of
east of Lincoln.
Devon and McCormick is Lincoln Woods. Just west of there, it's kind
It's
of
on
north,
Tui.
just starting there and northwest.
This
Is it,
story's on Tui, just east of Lincoln.
But yeah, definitely might be actually.
And I don't know why I failed to say this, but anybody here who's a Cook County resident, I do have these flyers here and in the back about the Spur campaign. And on the back of the sheet, it has all the contact information for Mayor Patel, who is the mayor of Lincolnwood, and all the contact information. So if you could take one of those and make a quick phone call and let them know you're a Cook County resident and that they should ban the sale of rabbits and ban the sale of naturally wild animals. You can do the same for Rocky. Contact Cook County government. You just look it up, Cook County government, Cook County President Tony Preckwinkle, and urge her to allow Rocky to go to sanctuary.
Okay, well, I just want to be a little bit educated about the rabbit situation, because I once briefly lived with some people who had a rabbit, and I heard that they're good pets, and I was just wondering why they're banned.
We're not advocating not having rabbits as pets. They're great pets. I mean, I shouldn't say that, I have never had one, but they're great animals. But I have been told they are hard to care for. They take a lot of work.
They can shoot for
Right. But I'm not, we are all pro having rabbits as companion animals, but there are so many rabbits being sold, there are never going to be enough homes. So by allowing the store to continue to sell rabbits illegally, because Cook County has banned it. If you go to Red Door Animal Shelter, which is right down, probably 2 miles from the animal store, you'll see their latest rabbit numbers. They do rabbit numbers from Easter to the next Easter. So it just started. I have a good friend on Facebook, Lorianne, who rescues rabbits every single day. She gets calls about domesticated rabbits that are abandoned or dumped. That's why they need to be stopped, because the sale of them. We're not advocating stopping the adoption of rabbits. The difference between adoption and selling is if you go to an animal shelter to adopt a rabbit or a cat or dog, you are screened. You're asked questions about, why what other animals you have and stuff like that. You have to pay a nominal fee. When you go into a pet store, like at the animal store, as long as you've got the credit card or cash, you can buy anything. And it doesn't matter what your living situation is. It doesn't matter if you have a very aggressive, violent dog in the house. It doesn't matter if your landlord doesn't allow pets. As long as you've got the money, you can get it. So it's time that we stop selling animals like they're material goods, and that will stop the overpopulation and the killing of healthy animals in shelters that have to do so, because there just aren't enough homes and aren't enough cage space. So yeah, we definitely love rabbits. This is nothing against rabbits. Yeah, definitely if you're on Facebook, go to the Red Door Animal Shelter's Facebook page, and you'll see how they are constantly bombarded with having to go and rescue more rabbits that people see.
At the pet store also, you don't know what you're getting, if it's eating properly.
Yeah, exactly.
Their son brought a bunny from the pet store for the grandchild with all the equipment and the bottles. It wasn't weaned yet, and it wouldn't eat, and it died.
Exactly.
They actually
And you made an important point, is he sells unneutered and unfixed rabbits. So people might go in, buy a rabbit for their child for Easter, and then within days the rabbit might give birth to however many more rabbits that the people didn't want. So the situation is very, it's inexcusable in this day and age. Yes?
I thought this was supposed to be about veganism.
That's Kay's job.
Could you repeat the questions?
She said she thought the presentation was about veganism. But after this is done, after the Q&A, Kay will take anyone upstairs to show you the vegan museum.
Thank you for Jodie, this talk has been great.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you for all the advocacy. It sounds like it's really been quite a process.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Well, could you answer a question about that?
Sure. Yeah.
Well, just that, my boyfriend was telling me about all these horrible things that were done, ways that animals were slaughtered during the pandemic. And I was wondering whether anybody is trying to stop stuff. And he told me that the veterinarian, I think the American Veterinarian Association approved of it even.
Yeah.
And I was just, is there anybody fighting against this?
There are bigger groups. I mean, CAA is very grassroots. I actually am the only staff member.
I'm just shocked because I didn't hear anything on the media about it myself.
Yeah, there's definitely, I mean, during the pandemic, they were slaughtering chickens like by the billions because of bird flu. But this isn't just during COVID. This happens regularly. If there's any sort of outbreak, the animals are killed. And there are major organizations like Mercy for Animals who fight to expose that. I would love to fight that too, but unfortunately, you know, we kind of work on smaller issues because it's me and a handful of volunteers. We're all grassroots here, and we have very little funding. We don't have any of the funding that the big organizations have. So, but there are groups working on that. If you do a search, I'm sure PETA, HSUS, they all will. I mean, I can't say for sure, but yeah, there are bigger groups working on that.
It was shocking, the things that I heard.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of shocking, sad stuff out there.
They were so upsetting.
Oh yeah, yeah.
When there's an outbreak, they don't have to follow their regular slaughter standards, so they cull them and they can kill them in any way they want.
Exactly, yeah.
When there's a what?
When there's an outbreak of a virus, so when you slaughter animals, you're supposed to USDA guidelines for slaughter and what is humane and not humane. When there's an outbreak, they can cull them or slaughter them, whatever is most efficient. That might be mass burning, mass gas, so they get a loophole.
Yeah.
Because they now consider the outbreak as a threat to humans, so they get a loophole from the government to do this quickly without consideration.
And even the standard way that they do things is very
Not
sad. It's cruel. I mean,
Yeah, and there's no there's no CLTV making sure that, you know, that should be required. That would be very important, but. Anybody else have any other questions?
Oh, go ahead. Oh, that's okay. I'm just gonna ask more about what you would say is like the best, if I only did one thing or something, especially for Spur and Rocky, would you say protesting outside of the store is more beneficial, or actually just constantly contacting the people, like the public officials?
I think the DAAs and helping us testify in person are the most powerful things you could do. Protesting, this is something I might not have mentioned, but you know, sometimes people say, you know, give me the phone number of the animal store, I'll call them. You know, when we worked on the horse carriage campaign, we didn't reach out to the horse carriage operators. I told my volunteers, please do not talk to them, which I didn't bring up. They tried to sue me. They tried to sue me in CAA. And I was served with a lawsuit, I'm sorry, I wasn't served, but it was in the Chicago Tribune the day after our September, the long hearing that I talked about, saying that claimed we harassed them and that we were interfering with their business practices. I was never served because we didn't talk to them, we didn't interfere with their business practices, we didn't talk to the riders of the carriage rides. If you don't talk to the exploiters, it's very difficult to harass them. So I told my volunteers, do not ever talk to them, don't talk to the riders, hold your sign, be peaceful. And so the same thing with like the animal store. Contacting the owner is pointless. The guy profits off of animal exploitation. So there's no point in ever reaching out to the exploiter. The key is reaching out to the officials. So for Spur, we testify on, they have their board meetings on the first and third Tuesday of every month. We go to every meeting, and because of us, they have changed how they work it. We used to be able to testify at the start of the meeting. Now they make us wait till the end of the meeting because they are trying to deter us from coming. But they don't know us. We're going to keep coming. So feel free, I'll give you my card. If you're local, we go, like I said, coming to that helps because we're always looking for new faces, and doing the DAAs, which literally, I mean, a lot of people say they took a lot longer than a minute. And I said, then you're doing it wrong. I mean, you can send a Facebook message and write free Spur and click send. And that takes, what, 5 seconds. If you want to write an email, it might take a little longer. But I can guarantee you that writing one sentence or 2 words is all we ask. Because it's not about writing a long, amazing email. They're not going to read it. They already know us. They're bored. They're sick of us. So the key is just getting more and more people taking that action.
Which board? I'm sorry, I missed it.
I'm sorry?
The Cook County board or the local?
Cook County for Rocky is the Cook County Commissioners. Yeah. That's the target.
So it's their board meeting?
We do that once a month. For Rocky, the Cook County Board of Forest District has 1 meeting a month. So we do that, and anyone here who wants to help, I can give you the information. I post all of our actions on Facebook. So feel free to join CAA, friend me.
So one of the things you mentioned was like Chicago actually has very liberal laws, like for animal rights or like the horses in general, which we know because we all live here. But like Savannah, you mentioned, I've been there multiple times,
Yep.
and they don't care about animals there like at all. So I know they don't have laws. So if you're looking at places like that, obviously this was I'm not meaning to say this was easy for you, but the one advantage that you had was that you could prove that they were breaking the law, and then Chicago was either going to fine them or shut it down because, you know, they'll ticket us for parking anywhere. Of course they're going to do that. So what do you suggest for like a place like Savannah particularly where they don't have that?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. We had meetings with 4 of Savannah's city council members, all supported a ban.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I'm so surprised.
We were so close to a Savannah. I thought Savannah was going to be the next city after Chicago, but the Savannah activists stopped. They stopped everything. They wouldn't have outreach. They wouldn't do DAAs. And we had these meetings with 1 or 2 Savannah activists and myself. We had 4, and I think they only have 8 or 9 city council members. So we already had almost a slam dunk. Yes, I was devastated. I mean, literally, because here in Chicago, we had to get 26 to vote yes. 26, they only have to get 4 or 5. So there are smaller cities, and that's the thing is just because they don't have books on the law or laws on the books to protect the animals doesn't mean the city council doesn't care.
Yeah.
Because same with Indianapolis, we met with at least three in Indy who support a ban. They're not doing anything. So the key is to actually get people to take action. It's very difficult. I mean, and I say this all the time. I'll help anyone if they are committed. Because we can't do it. We can't ban horse carriages in Atlanta. We can't ban them in Malta. The local activists have to do it. I'll help. I'll do everything I can. I'll testify before their city council. But it can be done. And a lot of people said that we somehow got it easy and we had liberal city council. Like, does anybody know Cook County? No. Like I said, we had a 4.5-hour hearing that got blocked. The vote got blocked. The democratic process got blocked.
So you would think that that would have worked in your favor, that
No.
they had laws in place.
Yeah, and some don't have laws, but it doesn't really matter if they have laws or not. They're never enforced. So, yeah. Well, it's just 2:34, I think. Does anybody have any last questions? Okay. We'll take you and then you.
What you take to keep them?
Hold on, question? Go ahead.
I'm very ignorant about this, so I think I'm genuinely curious. The horse-drawn carriages, like a lot of it seems like, you know, with the cars, that's just rad, but like a place like Mackinac Island where there's just like, I didn't realize that this was cool. I thought horses loved doing this kind of stuff. No, I don't.
That's okay. That's okay.
No idea. That's not
Yeah.
part of it? Yeah. Okay.
I mean, not everybody understands it, and you know, I'll admit I didn't realize how dangerous it was. I never liked it. I thought it was inhumane, but I didn't know the dangers involved until I really got involved in the campaign. So, the difference with Mackinac Island, that will be a hard one because there aren't motor vehicles. It would take a dedicated team in Mackinac to fight it. It would be hard. It might be the hardest one.
But how, I'm sorry, how is that cool of horse?
Well, for one, like I said, laws aren't enforced. So if there's laws on the books how long those horses can work, chances are they're not enforced. So unless you're on the street from the minute they start until the minute they end to see how long they're actually working, to see how you have to be there all day to make sure they're getting water. You have to be there if it's hot to make sure they're not overworking them in the heat. So then they're wearing blinders. They got a bit in their mouth. It's whether it's completely, it's like not like slaughtering an animal cruel, but it's exploitation. And even though there aren't motor vehicles in Mackinac Island, there are accidents with just horse carriages because they are prey animals. So the littlest thing, a horn, there aren't motorcycles, But, you know, the littlest things, like an umbrella opening, can scare a horse, and they can take off. And if that horse takes off, anybody in their way, you know, a pedestrian, another, you know, is in real danger. Imagine a 2,000 pound horse running into you at full speed. So it's dangerous and it's exploitative. They're walking on hard concrete all day. When their hooves are meant to, you know, be on grass and dirt, they're not meant to be on hard concrete. And if they're, one last thought on that, if they're not following the laws, if the laws aren't being enforced, how do we know they're getting proper vet care? How do we know their shoes are being cared for? I'm not a horse expert, but I know they wear horseshoes and they're supposed to be checked. How do we know the bit fits properly? We don't, because the laws aren't enforced. Nobody's looking at those things. And they're gonna have a vet who's already in the industry who's gonna rubber stamp, say, yes, this horse is fine. Nobody's gonna know.
It's like they're like slaves, they're treated somewhat as slaves.
Even though we're in trouble, we can say, yeah, you can't say that.
Right. It's true.
You can interact with them, and the human animal bond is amazing, but they don't have to be exploited for us to interact with them.
It's a whole life is giving us.
But yeah.
And then they're attached. They have every part of their, this is something that always bothered me, especially on hot days. Their entire body they're hooked up. They're hooked up with blinders. They've got a bit. If they move this way, they got wires. So we would see like if a horse had a cut on their leg, flies all over that cut. And the entire day, the horse is doing this. They can't get those flies. They can't scratch it. They can't. Once we saw, this was toward the end of the campaign, a horse's tail was braided and actually attached to the carriage. So the reason these horses have a tail, one of the reasons, is to swish flies and bugs away. And to like, this poor horse's tail was braided and attached to the carriage. So he had a scar on his leg. You could see him trying to move his tail and free his tail, and he couldn't. And I got this on video, and we called animal control, and they came and they made the operator release the horse's tail and take the horse back to the stable. So that's just an example. You know, if I wasn't down there that day, if my volunteers and I weren't down there, that horse would have spent the entire day, and who knows how many days more having his tail, you know, stuck to the carriage. There's nothing natural about that. You had a question?
Are you here in Chicago?
I do, yeah, I live right in Chicago. Yeah, and I welcome any volunteers or any questions. You know, you could text me, you could Facebook message me, you could call me, and I'm welcome. You know, I'm always looking for more volunteers.
Jodie, I can understand how some of the language with slavery can offend, you know, some people. I can understand that. So I just wonder, you know, and I also agree very much about the campaigns. I want to say both. Are there any alternative language that's suggested that might be
Sure.
sort of calling more people in, or?
Yeah, I mean, we basically, after we met with this commissioner, we've alerted everyone, please try to not use certain words because they trigger certain people. You know, I understand that. So I don't use those words because, you know, you don't want to offend people, okay? So I'll say confined,
Okay.
you know, in captivity.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Anyone else? Last question. One last question.
You didn't touch on the puppy mill thing.
I know. I thought about it today. What? Oh, I know. I don't know even how I forgot that. But long story short, everyone, a bill had passed in 2014, I believe, that prohibited the sale of dogs and cats.
Stores.
Yeah, it's basically the same one with the rabbits. But it never was enforced. And people worked hard to get this bill passed, but then they did nothing to make sure it was enforced. So once we banned the horse carriages, we literally, like, the next month went into getting that shut down, and we protested the pocket puppies on Clark Street every month, and within a year, Alderman Hopkins, who introduced the second horse carriage bill, got it passed. He introduced the loophole law, and we got it passed, which shut down 2 of the stores, and I believe the 3rd one's still open. It's on the south side, I believe, but he doesn't sell dogs, cats, or rabbits. So, I mean, ideally, we'd love to ban the sale of all animals, and baby steps. But yes, we were very successful with the pocket puppies and the puppy mill store campaign. Thank you for bringing that up. Something I'm very proud of. Laura helped a lot with that. All right, well, Kay, I don't want to take any more of your time. We got to go upstairs.
Thank you.